She says, quote, "I am not a uterus riding around in a meat incubator. There is no substantive difference between the repulsive campaign to separate women's bodies from their reproductive systems, perpetuating the lie that abortion and birth control are not healthcare, and the repulsive campaign to convince women that they and their body size are separated, alienated entities. Both say your body is not yours. Both demand you beg for your humanity. Both insist your autonomy is conditional. This is why fat is a feminist issue." End quote. So controlling and minimising our bodies are two ways body shame not only interrupts but shapes the everyday. From our concerns with fat, and for many in curtailing the presence of menstrual blood, discharge, odour, shit, sweat, hair, stretch marks, pregnancy and post-pregnant bodies, how dark or light our skin is, where we show our skin, how we show our skin. The shame that we feel and we express onto ourselves is tiresome. And there's a historic discomfort with women's bodies from ourselves and wider society. And when we think about marginalised identities within the category of womanhood, the shame is intensified massively. We do things completely naturally that are already considered outside cultural boundaries of what a woman's body should and shouldn't do. We drip, squirt, sweat, spit, expand, contract, pulse, sag, expel, dilate, divide. Many of us bleed, crave, bellow and hate. In a study of Spanish men and women by Moya Garofano and Moya, they saw that self-objectification by women to themselves, that is, body surveillance by monitoring outward appearance and judging it by particular social standards, increases shame about their body overall. There is a significant relationship between body surveillance and appearance contingent self-worth. In a similar study on women who menstruate and the relationship between shame and sexual satisfaction, the researchers reported that menstrual shame is indirectly associated with sexual decision-making via body shame. As expected, women who reported feeling more comfortable about menstruation also reported more body comfort and in turn more sexual assertiveness, more sexual experience, less sexual risk and more pleasure. Our own body shame counteracts our ability to experience pleasure. Author Emily Gold asks us, quote, "Why do women who aren't afraid to humiliate themselves appall us so much? And why do we find the rush to find superficial reasons to dismiss them? She's crazy, she's a narcissist, she's young, she's a fame whore." I think in part because they pose a threat to the social order, which relies on women's embarrassment to keep them either silent or expressing ourselves in socially accepted modes, end quote. Shame, then, is experienced as a pervasive sense of personal inadequacy through the shame of embodiment, revealing the generalised condition of dishonour which is women's lot in a sexist society. Similarly, the conditions of our sexist society are framed by neoliberalism. So how can we not internalise body shame when the way that we live is dictated by it? Our bodies bear the mark of our socioeconomic work consequences, and every part of our physicality, and both public and private, is drenched with doubt and unrealisable, dull goals. Even my coffee is feminist. It's from Girls Who Grind, and they're a really great coffee company that support women. Anyway, Alison Phipps's book, The Politics of the Body, claims the drive to consume in order to both express and add value to oneself feeds markets that rely upon idealised representations of the body and the elevation of particular prestigious bodily forms through advertising. So we see our body as an endlessly unfinished project, which is both central to consumer capitalism as well as to broader factions of patriarchal domination. When we work towards endlessly modifying and critiquing ourselves, which we know how to do through practices of body shaming, we sustain global industries predicated on our bodies being less than in a constantly mutating litany of social pressure. We attempt to alleviate body shame in ways that promote market culture. That's the way we've been taught to do it. They profit massively on exploiting dissatisfaction we are taught to feel. As a result, in the West, minor variations, Phipps notes, in appearance on fairly ordinary bodies are cast as major defects, signalling a spoiled identity, and sit on the side of the before in the commonly employed before and after photo set. This body is characterised by a white, Western aesthetic of a feminine beauty. It is a body that is neutral and unmarked and does not look disabled, queer, ugly, fat, ethnic or raced. I think we can, however, choose to wax our pussies, iron our hair in all the ways possible, apply makeup, go to the gym and wear heels without being the lobotomized patriarchy cheerleaders. But it is important to critique why these things are so characteristic of womanhood, and what it feels like for those who reject or cannot exist by these standards, and why do we choose to do it? We could just like it. If we change the goal from endlessly striving for the automatons of womanhood to working to see ourselves as already existing as whole with extras as just that, add-ons, and to pursue pleasure and challenge aesthetics, choices are made more freely and our self-worth strengthens. However, we also couch body shaming in health language to give credit to the ignorant things that we're saying. Terms like overweight and BMI. BMI was developed over 200 years ago by a mathematician with no training on matters of bodily health. We are seeing fat as a critical cause of health epidemics and ignoring the wider social conditions that contribute to health malaise overall, which just works to promote body shaming and perpetuate the minimisation and subordination of women. Olive Femi, in her latest book, which you should definitely get, it's in the references, she says that having a body is stressful when it could be easy. There is no clearer manifestation of neoliberalism than in our attitudes towards bodies. If you do not have the right kind of body, you cannot be the right kind of the perfect worker, which is why fatness is so shamed in our society. The worst thing a woman can be is too much, too big, too loud, too into herself, and apparently too hairy. Hairy women, that is, in places besides the scalp, the brows and the eyelashes, are rated as less sexually attractive, intelligent, sociable, happy and positive compared to hairless women in multiple studies in the Western culture by two researchers called Bazo and Brahman. We are seen as less friendly, moral and relaxed, and more aggressive, unsociable and dominant compared to women who remove their body hair cross-culturally. Research has shown that women with negative attitudes toward body hair also report more body disgust and stronger feelings that their bodies are unacceptable and unattractive in their natural state. The complexity of hair is only intensified when we centralise different women, black, indigenous and women of colour, trans women, gay women, older women, religious women. The body shame we cast introspectively then influences our behaviours towards others. And this brings me to the final section, into women shaming. So, to start, it is important as a white cis woman and also someone who is thin to use this webinar to be aware that there are experiences of womanhood that white women has historically kept out. Body shaming and policing still happens in so-called feminist texts. For example, the amount of shaming that still happens to our sisters of colour, our sex working sisters, our trans sisters, our gender non-conforming siblings, our working class sisters, incarcerated sisters, disabled sisters, gay sisters, fat sisters, happening not only from men but from women ourselves. We all occupy various identities and we need to be aware that we can perpetuate shame through ignorance. Body shaming and body policing is something we're all guilty of. As I said, white women have held entry to womanhood for a long time, misunderstanding the complexities of race and body policing. And cis women have been the gatekeepers to an accepted form of aesthetic that even personal faves can be guilty of doing, like Bell Hooks shaming trans woman Laverne Cox about feeding the patriarchal gaze with her hairstyle. Shame cast between women also takes the form of looking down on those sisters who engage in sexual work and more broadly slut-shaming. We shame women for wearing too much makeup or not engaging in attaining a certain aesthetic enough. We don't need to shame each other for our choices. That's different from holding each other to account. We need to promote a collective consciousness and how body shaming is pervasive, even in progressive, women-centred circles. As feminists, we cannot simply apologise for the exclusion or shaming tactics we have or still do to remedy it fully by simply platforming voices. A different aspect of shame that I mentioned at the beginning It's actually an important part of political organising and movement. Rather, this form of productive shame should constitute an intrinsic part of, most notably, white feminist struggles as activists, and it can be used to integrate more usefully in practice as opposed to castigating. Shaming this way is a method of recognising the past and accounting for the benefits we have from it. But back to body shame between women in general. Normative values of our society are so internalised that when shame enters our conscious awareness, it's seen as a result of our own inadequacies and our own fault. So we make personal efforts to improve it. All aligned around consumption like shopping, exercise, dieting, and surgery in order to eliminate our perceived personal failure. To finish, how can we productively tackle body shame? In that one sip, I did expect you all to come up with these brilliant solutions, but I think that because women, we are as complex as we are diverse, there isn't a single answer beyond challenging what we have been taught to know and to do so in whatever capacity we have with each other. In leveraging women's agency in arenas that are within but also beyond the value of beauty, we can be influenced by what Spivak says, that if shame and disgust are effective methods to maintain power hierarchies, quote, why not develop a certain degree of rage against the history that has written such an abject script for you, end quote. Body shame exists in myriad ways, more than I can ever cover or ever be even conscious of as a thin white cis woman. But all body shaming and policing does is cast a visceral anxiety into our everyday. So what happens when we dissent from what the mainstream, and by that I mean white men's voices, and put that shit into the ether? Put that shit into the ether. Let's do it. Sometimes it is violence, because when a system is predicated on the ability to control bodies to fit a particular narrative and profit massively from it, unpaid domestic and care labour, there are brutal strategies to maintain it. But when we do resist, we continue to broaden the scope of what it means to be a woman and to enable others to live a more authentic life. The body, particularly women's, are political grounds. By changing the way we see the capacity and value of women, we resist and make a more livable culture. Our feminisms all have different lines, and we have to figure out how our personal choice with the communities that we live in and decide what is right for us, ridding unrealistic, harmful expectations and foregrounding expression and pleasure. Any newfound freedom has to extend beyond the self and be free from conditions of oppression for all. Feminism is expansive and a tool or lens we can use to analyse and critique and strategise ways to overthrow the conditions we're not vibing with. We are constantly reminded of how oppression works, and it's depressingly present. But feminist practice is radical and it's always changing. We are always learning, and to be feminist is to be alive and conscious to such conditions. Making women feel bad for stepping out of cosmetic line and castigating bodies into hierarchies serves no one but the crippling force of patriarchy. So to finish with a quote from Woolf in The Beauty Myth, she says, quote, "A consequence of female self-love is that a woman grows convinced of her social worth. Her love for her body will be unqualified, which is the basis of female identification. If a woman loves her own body, she doesn't grudge what other women do with hers. If she loves femaleness, she champions its rights. It's true what they say about women. Women are insatiable. We are greedy. Our appetites do need to be controlled if things are to stay in place. If the world were ours too, if we believed we could get away with it, we would ask for more love, more sex, more money, more commitment to children, more food, more care. These sexual, emotional and physical demands would begin to extend to social demands, payment for the care of the elderly, parental leave, childcare, etc. The force of female desire would be so great that society would truly have to reckon with what women want in bed and in the world," end quote. Thanks for listening, and I hope you come back next week with my 30-minute session on self-love as a radical act. and check out the resources if you want to know more.